Hello there, Inky Fingers here from Inky Fingers Architectural Art. Usually the type of work I do is quite highly detailed black and white work using pen and ink, quite architectural, but sometimes a scene comes along that doesn't suit that type of method. So you get scenes that are going to be more atmospheric in nature instead of architectural, highly detailed. And today I have such a picture. So I'm going to try to paint it with absolute minimal details so it's kept quite uncomplicated. So this is the photograph that we're going to attempt to paint in an atmospheric style. It's of Glastonbury High Street. It's just a photograph was sent to me by a very good friend. And the story is that this is like a minute or two before the heavens completely opened up and there was torrential rain and even hailstones. Lasted for about 5 minutes and then the dissipating blue sky came out. So we can see we've got a nice big dark cloud. I suspect that the clouds in by the eye, if you were actually standing there, would have been much darker. So what I'm going to attempt to do is to have a nice atmospheric, brooding, dark, cloudy sky going down lighter towards the horizon. And then we have this, this is St. John the Baptist Church. We'll have this a nice light wash. Maybe it's more of a, I think in reality it's a little bit more yellowy, like a yellow ochre type of colour. So we'll have that more a pale yellow ochre. And then just minimal detail. There's not going to be much detail here because it's going to be more atmospheric. And then we'll come down into the foreground with some nice figures. And when it's all painted in, I'm going to use the ink because this is Inky, the Inky Fingers channel. So I will use a pen with ink, but I'm only going to draw in the foreground. Probably is this lamppost here, the people, and maybe a touch of detailing in a little bit of this tree. So what will happen there is that the pen is going to define the foreground and everything else in the background is going to be, it's not going to have pen. So it's going to be pushed into the background a bit. And hopefully it'll give a nice sense of 3D-ness and hopefully it'll just look nice. Now this is the picture already drawn out in pencil. It's very loose because I'm not going for detail in this picture. But the first thing we need to do with this is, of course, if we're going to paint in the sky, we just want to paint over, when we paint in the clouds in, we need to paint over the St. John the Baptist Church. So I need to use some masking fluid and mask off all the church, these houses, the cross, and I think I'll mask out the lamp post here, so when we paint the background tree in, it's not going to go over. And I think we'll maybe mask out the people. So I'm starting off this painting just by wetting the sky. This is on a sheet of arch paper, just slightly smaller than A4. And then in that wash I'm just putting a very weak wash of yellow ochre. This is for the sort of stormy background glow. And then over that, this is just ultramarine blue and light red. It mixes a very pale grey. Now into that, this is the same colour, ultramarine blue, light red, but there's some cobalt black in there. And it's a much thicker mix, and I'm just putting it in. I'm making sure that I put it in over the church. So it's dark against light, light against dark. And this is the same colour, but I'm just blobbing it in a little bit. I'm not spreading it out as much. I'm not looking at the photograph really, I'm just putting colour where I want it. Where I think it looks nice. Now while that's drying, the pavement, this is just the same colours, is a yellow ochre underwash, and then I'll mix in a weak wash of the ultramarine blue and light red. And the trees is yellow ochre and a colour called quartz green. It's a granulating colour, which is perfect for the foliage. And I'm just dropping it into the wet yellow ochre wash. And the other tree is exactly the same. Just drop it in the wet wash, let it do its own thing really. We shall put other things over this later on, so this is just an underwash really. And now I've darkened the colour up by adding a little bit of black into it, and while it's still wet, just drop it in and again just let it do its own thing. Let it spread out. Whatever happens, happens. Now this tree, this is going to be a little bit of dry brush. It's a little lighter colour. This is light yellow ochre and some cobalt blue. Now I'm adding some of the quartz green into it, just to give that textured mottled appearance of foliage. But I don't want this to be a bright vivid colours because it's going to be stormy sky. Now this is just some burnt umber and ultramarine blue, and I'm just putting in some strokes for the trunk. Now I've got some clean water on the brush and I'm just splattering the wet foliage, which is of course is going to create some watermarks, some cauliflowers, and it'll give texture to the foliage. Now the bushes and the hedges, this is just again a bit of yellow, normal yellow this time, and some cobalt blue. Now the masking fluids needs to come off, and we have some pretty pristine white paper. It's not perfect, but now the underwash, this is raw sienna. I thought yellow ochre was a little bit too bright, but raw sienna was just right. It just needs to be a flat wash. I'll put some detail as such, even though it's not going to be real detail, on afterwards when it's dry. And while I've got this colour, I'll just warm the pavement up a little bit. Now the lamppost, this is just black and blue. Now I'm trying not to be neat with this lamppost, I just really want a shape. Now it's all dry, I'm putting, this is the same colour as what I put on previous, it's just a little bit more black in the mix. Now the black is a granulating colour, so anything you put in with the black will of course granulate. And the the ultramarine blue is also granulating, so it's all good. Now I've put some of this dark green on the paper, and then I'm putting the brush into some clean water, and then just dropping this water onto the paper, onto this wet paint, and then pulling it around here and there with the tip of the brush. So parts of it are getting diluted and other parts aren't. So you will get a sort of a strong mottled type of effect.
and of course I'm using a smaller brush for this. And I'm doing exactly the same with the top of the tree. I'm using the tip of this brush to add some detail on the edges of the trees, i.e. leaves. Simulate leaves. And once again, for this tree, it's identical process. Now I've just got some yellow, Azo Yellow Light I think this is, or Azo Yellow Medium, and I've just put a glaze on parts of the trees just to give a little bit of. The sun is sort of coming out. It's so you want. I thought I'd have a touch of colour in. Now the beginnings of the detail in the church. This is just a stronger mix of raw sienna. Now I'm not looking at the photograph. I'm just sort of putting in where the windows would be. Now this is a very dark ultramarine blue and black mix. I'm just highlighting, well, darkening where some shadow. I think some shadows would be, just to give a little bit more definition within the recessed areas of the church or any sort of detail. But I'm trying not to put the actual detail in. It's very, very sort of hit and miss this stage. Now I decided to put a little bit of shadow on the right hand side. In my little world the sun had just come out, so some shadows were in order. Now, of course it gives it a little bit more atmosphere, a bit more character. And the shadow colour is just the ultramarine blue and light red. Now to add a little bit more texture to the foliage, as ever I always do splattering. Now this is just a dark version of the foliage. Now for some highlights, to add a little sunshine, this is just white ink on a small brush, and I'll just put little bits of paint where I think highlights will be. This is on the lamp, on the people, on whatever. Few little highlights simulating window frames. There isn't really any window frames there, but I thought it just needed some light. Now another wash on the church shadow. I just thought it was a little bit too light. Now for the railings and some of the other darks, I'm actually using it's like a little Sharpie pen. It's not a pen for art, but it's got quite a finer nib than a Sharpie pen. But for the railings I thought this works brilliantly, so I used it. And of course the black railings against the lighter foreground really emphasises a little bit of sunlight. Now I've gone to a smaller pen. This is a 0.1 for the finer details. A few more details on the figures, some scribbles here and there where the shadow areas are. And it's just a little bit of tidying up really. And then finally a little bit of splatter of some dirty ochre colour on the pavement just for a bit of texture. And then that, I think, is the picture finished. And there we go, that's the picture finished. What do I think of it? I like it. It is certainly uncomplicated. There's barely any pen work on this one. The colour palette is much more subdued because of the oncoming storm clouds. In other words, it's quite atmospheric, which is what I wanted to do. But I'm sure next week I'll be back to normal and doing some slightly more technical things. Well, who knows?
Now, if you want to see other type of work that I do, then you can of course find me on Instagram. Just type in Inky Fingers Architectural Art and you'll find me. So as ever, I'll see you next week. So until then, goodbye.